What if Hollywood's greatest stars weren't just acting? Lenny Montana torched buildings for the Colombos before The Godfather. Tony Darrow got his break from a Lucchese capo, then caught a real extortion rap. Alex Rocco ran with the Winter Hill Gang and was one-side in a gangland hit. Richard Muldoon walked onto the set of The Sopranos straight from prison. Even Burt Young once asked a Mafia boss if he could get made, but they weren't the only ones. Some of Hollywood's biggest stars have secrets even wilder than the movies. Remember Larry Boy from The Sopranos? Turns out the actor behind the mob capo wasn't just playing a tough guy. He had some real-life mob drama of his own. Anthony Borghese, better known by his stage name Tony Darrow, stepped right off the set of The Sopranos and into a Brooklyn courtroom. Back in 2004, Borghese didn't just play a mobster, he teamed up with real Gambino associates for an old-fashioned debt collection. And by old-fashioned, I mean brutal. Here's how it went down. Borghese allegedly met with two Gambino enforcers at a diner in Monticello, New York. Over a casual bite, because of course they gotta eat, they planned the job. Borghese then hopped into their car, pointed out the target's house, and left the rest to the pros. The Gambino guys showed up at the poor guy's door and gave him a beating straight out of a Sopranos script. Broken jaw, broken ribs, the works. FBI recordings even caught one of the mobsters bragging, "Tony showed us the house, we did the rest." Sounds like a deleted scene, right? Fast forward to Darrow's court date. He pled guilty to extortion charges and faced up to 20 years behind bars. Lucky for him, he cut a deal and ended up with a shorter sentence. Darrow has since apologized, saying he wants to warn kids that crime doesn't pay. Guess he's pulling a Carmela, trying to set a good example. But let's be real, this isn't the first time a Sopranos actor blurred the lines between fiction and reality. So, what do you think? Did Larry Boy Bareilles take method acting too far? Let me know in the comments.
Are you Lawrence Barisi?
Oh, what the fuck?
Lenny Montana was no actor, at least not in the traditional sense. Best known or only known as Luca Brasi, the fearsome yet doomed enforcer in The Godfather, Montana wasn't just playing a mob heavy, he was one. Before Hollywood, he was a 6'6", 300-pound wrestling champion turned enforcer for New York's Colombo crime family, where he handled muscle work and allegedly arson jobs. His entry into film was pure serendipity. While working as a bodyguard for a young Colombo Don, he ended up on The Godfather set, where Francis Ford Coppola spotted the not-so-gentle giant and immediately cast him. Montana's presence was so raw, so authentic, that Coppola barely needed to direct him. When asked if he could spin the cylinder of a revolver, Montana smirked, "You kiddin'?" Off-screen, he kept everyone on edge with his real-life mob stories. He used to tell us all these things like he was an arsonist, associate producer Gray Fredrickson recalled. He'd tie tampons to a mouse's tail, dip it in kerosene, light it, and let it loose in a building. Or he'd put a candle in front of a cuckoo clock, so when the cuckoo popped out, the candle would tip and start a fire. Even his kindness carried an undercurrent of menace. When Betty McCart, assistant to producer Al Ruddy, casually mentioned breaking her watch, Montana asked what kind she wanted. "An antique watch with diamonds," she joked, adding she'd probably settle for a cheap one. A week later, Montana left an antique diamond-studded watch on her desk, wrapped in Kleenex. "The boys sent you this," he said, "but don't wear it in Florida." Montana's Hollywood career never went beyond The Godfather. But maybe that's because he had already lived the role. A one-hit wonder? Maybe. But Luca Brasi and Lenny Montana were the real deal.
Louis Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
Luca Brasi. Luca.
Whatever.
Some guys play tough. Chuck Zito is tough. In the late 90s, he was impossible to ignore on Oz, where he played Chucky Pancamo, the menacing yet oddly charismatic lieutenant of the Italian gang inside Oswald State Correctional Facility. But for Zito, the role wasn't an act. It was an extension of his real life. His resume before Hollywood read more like a rap sheet than a casting call. Born in 1953 in the Bronx, Zito didn't study criminal psychology to prepare for a role, he lived it. A former president of the New York Hells Angels, he was outlaw royalty. He didn't just wear the leather cut, he earned it, riding with the infamous biker gang and enforcing its brutal code. His path to acting was anything but typical. While most actors struggled to break into Hollywood, Hollywood came to him. As a bodyguard for A-listers, Sylvester Stallone, Liza Minnelli, Mickey Rourke, and Jean-Claude Van Damme. He built a reputation as the guy to call when you needed real protection or a tough presence on screen. His big break came when Oz creator Tom Fontana cast him as Chucky Pancamo, a role that required little acting but plenty of presence. Zito wasn't just another hired bruiser. He was the real deal. His reputation followed him everywhere. Behind the scenes, Hollywood insiders whispered about his past, his rumored underground dealings, and the quiet menace he carried. Chuck wasn't acting, one former Oz crew member recalled. He just was that guy. In 1998, Zito made headlines for knocking out Jean-Claude Van Damme with a single punch at Scores, a high-end New York strip club. According to Zito, the action star had been running his mouth, so he shut it for him, an incident that only cemented his legend. "Talk shit, get hit," he later said, summing up his philosophy in one brutal sentence. Despite his screen presence, Zito never fully broke out beyond Oz. After the show ended, he drifted in and out of the industry, appearing in Carlito's Way, Sons of Anarchy, and various minor roles that never quite captured his essence. Instead, he found his niche on Hollywood's fringes, running a security company, dabbling in reality TV, and never abandoning the outlaw code that defined him. Then came Sons of Anarchy, a show Zito insists was stolen from him. He claimed he pitched a nearly identical biker drama to FX, only to be dismissed. "I went to FX with a show about outlaw bikers, and they told me they weren't interested." Then, a year later, Sons of Anarchy appears. His lawsuit against FX and creator Kurt Sutter went nowhere. But the accusation lingers, a reminder that Hollywood loves outlaw stories, but rarely plays fair.
Prisoner number 97P468, Charles Pancamo, a.k.a. Chucky the Enforcer.
Richard Maldone didn't just play Albert Bariz on The Sopranos, he was him. His brief but striking presence wasn't acting so much as authenticity. Maldone had few Hollywood credits, but he didn't need them. His street credibility was the kind casting directors rarely find outside police records. His past spoke for itself: assault, firearm possession, stolen cars, arrests, convictions, time served. David Chase, known for casting real-life tough guys, saw something in Maldone. "We didn't need to teach him the walk or the talk," a crew member recalled. "He just was that guy." His path to The Sopranos was as unconventional as his past. Without an audition or agent, he bluffed his way onto the set. "I saw a sign that said Sopranos and walked in," he recalled. "When you act like you belong, nobody asks why." He strolled up to James Gandolfini, shook his hand, and said, "I'm going to be on your show soon." Gandolfini smirked. "I bet you will be." A few auditions later, Maldone was Albert Bariz. But while The Sopranos was shooting its 5th season, Richard made headlines for all the wrong reasons. He was accused of dealing ketamine, a charge that blurred the already thin line between his on-screen persona and his real-life reputation. But unlike past troubles, this one didn't stick. His lawyer dismissed the case outright. The charge against Mr. Maldone is about as fictitious as the character that he plays on The Sopranos. Richard beat the case and walked away unscathed. Unlike many co-stars, he didn't parlay the role into a bigger career. Hollywood loves a reformed outlaw, but one who never fully leaves the life? That's another story. Today, Richard has left that chapter behind. He's now a DJ, spinning records instead of trouble. Beyond the turntables, he's writing. Scripts infused with the kind of gritty realism only lived experience can bring. Whether he stays behind the decks or steps into filmmaking, one thing is clear: Richard Maldone isn't playing a role anymore. He's writing his own story.
Can you imagine that? You get a facelift and 1 week later you're in jail?
Elizabeth Hurley built a career playing the femme fatale, but in the late 90s, reality blurred with fiction. Enter Dominic "Donnie Shax" Montemarano, a Colombo family enforcer turned film producer with an 11-year stint for racketeering. Their connection? Tabloid dynamite. Paparazzi caught them arm in arm in Beverly Hills. Hurley, 35, still glowing from Austin Powers and Bedazzled. Montemarano, 67, a reputed underworld figure. Their dinners with billionaire Steve Bing, Hurley's ex, only deepened the intrigue. Business? Romance? Strategy? Montemarano's pivot to film followed a classic gangster script, swapping prison for producer credits. Hurley, always savvy, needed financing. He had connections. Then came the pink catsuit moment. Hurley draped over Montemarano's neck, a scene straight out of a lost Scorsese reel. Their entanglement was fleeting, its reality ambiguous. But for a moment, Britain's ultimate 90s bombshell was linked to a man whose past read like a crime thriller, and that, in itself, was a headline. The larger-than-life Big Frank from The Sopranos, portrayed by Michael Squicciarini, wasn't just a wise guy on screen. In 2002, the show's drama echoed reality as he was implicated in a chilling real-life mafia execution. Squicciarini, who passed away in 2001, was linked to a 1992 murder orchestrated by the De Cavalcante Mafia family, which was one of the original inspirations for The Sopranos. The victim, Ralph Hernandez, a drug dealer, fell prey to a wheelchair-bound capo Joe Pitts. Squicciarini's involvement in this brutal episode surfaced through witnesses who recognized him, connecting the actor to the crime that unfolded beyond the scripted world of The Sopranos. Let's step back into a world where gangster meant sharp suits, whispered deals, and bullets with no names. A world where George Raft didn't just play wise guys, he was one. More than a Hollywood tough guy, Raft was a former underworld foot soldier who took a detour onto the silver screen. And while the flickering lights of Hollywood burnished his legend, his past followed him like a shadow in a dimly lit alley. Before he became the coin-flipping, cold-eyed Gino Ronaldo in Scarface, 1932, Raft was a Hell's Kitchen street kid, the son of German immigrants who had to fight for every inch. He could throw a punch, but his real talent was in his feet. He made a name as a dancer in speakeasies and nightclubs, catering to New York's underworld elite. His biggest patron? Oni Madden, the notorious Irish mobster behind the legendary Cotton Club. Raft didn't just rub elbows with criminals, he drove them. Before ever stepping in front of a camera, he was Madden's personal chauffeur. When Raft landed in Hollywood, he wasn't playing a gangster, he was being himself. Howard Hawks saw it immediately, casting him in Scarface as Tony Camonte's loyal yet lethal right-hand man, a role inspired by Al Capone's bodyguard, Frank Rio. His breakout performance made audiences take notice. That coin trick? Not in the script, just something Raft picked up from Hell's Kitchen wise guys who kept their hands free in case trouble started. The authenticity was impossible to fake. His mob ties didn't end with Madden. Raft was tight with Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky, key architects of organized crime in America. He even brokered peace between feuding gangsters, leveraging his Hollywood clout. His connections worked both ways. He reportedly saved James Cagney's life when the Yankee Doodle Dandy star crossed the wrong people. Same with Gary Cooper, whose romantic entanglements put him on a mobster's bad side. Raft didn't just play gangsters with a code, he lived by one. Despite his fame, Raft never fully escaped his underworld ties. They cost him movie roles, and later, much more. In the 60s, he was denied entry into the UK due to his associations with known criminals, a phrase the FBI might as well have stamped on his passport. His final years were quiet, the glitz and glamour of Hollywood long gone. But the myth of George Raft remains, a man who blurred the line between Hollywood fantasy and street-level reality. Did you know the Terminator Burt Young had some intriguing ties to the mob? Let's dive in. Burt Young wasn't just an actor, he was a Marine who boxed his way to 32 wins out of 34 matches. Maybe that's why he fit so perfectly into the gritty, working-class roles he became famous for. But here's where it gets wild. Young loved hanging around actual wise guys so much, he reportedly asked Vic Amuso, a real-life boss of the Lucchese crime family, if he could become a made man. Amuso's response? Stick to acting, kid. And Burt wasn't shy about showing love to the Italian-American community. He once signed a Rocky poster at the iconic La Donna Rosa restaurant. Sopranos fans, you know the type. It's the kind of place where Robert De Niro might sit at the next table, and you don't ask too many questions. Alex Rocco didn't just make an impression, he made it count. As Mo Green, the brash, bespectacled Las Vegas casino boss in The Godfather, Rocco secured his place in mob movie history. Though his screen time was limited, lines like, "I made my bones when you were going out with cheerleaders," made him a fan favorite. His bullet through the eye execution in the film's climactic montage even inspired a crime film trope, the Mo Green Special. But Rocco's on-screen bravado wasn't just acting. It was a lived experience. Born Alexander F. Petricone Jr. in Cambridge, Massachusetts, he had real ties to one of Boston's most feared crime outfits, the Winter Hill Gang. This Irish-American syndicate, linked to notorious figures like James Whitey Bulger, dominated the city's organized crime scene, and Rocco was in the thick of it. In 1961, he was arrested as a suspect in the broad daylight murder of Bernard "Bernie" McLaughlin, a high-ranking Irish gang leader from Charlestown. The hit, allegedly carried out by Winter Hill boss James "Buddy" McLean, was a turning point in Boston's gang wars. A witness claimed McLean fired the fatal shots while Rocco drove the getaway car. Both men were arrested, but in classic mob fashion, a grand jury refused to indict them. Danger followed Rocco. 4 years later, his former ally McLean was killed in the ongoing gang war. Rocco was jailed again after a diner brawl in Somerville. While he was behind bars, his wife borrowed a car from Howard T. Winter, the gang's new boss. Unbeknownst to her, the car had been rigged with a bomb. She survived the explosion, but the close call convinced Rocco it was time to leave Boston and his criminal past behind. With no acting experience or clear plan, Rocco made a life-changing choice. I needed to leave the Boston area, so I flipped a coin and decided, heads, Miami, tails, California, he later told the Boston Globe. The coin landed on California. Armed with street smarts and a new identity, he headed west. Hollywood wasn't on his radar, but fate had other plans. Rocco's gritty edge made him a natural on screen. After landing small roles, he found his way to The Godfather. Though he built a long career in Hollywood, appearing in films and TV shows for decades, his tough guy persona remained central. He left his mark in The Friends of Eddie Coyle, Get Shorty, Find Me Guilty, and Smokin' Aces. But no matter how many roles he played, he would always be remembered as Mo Green, the man who made his bones in both crime and cinema.
Do you know who I am? I'm Mo Green.
Jerry Orbach spent over a decade as the face of justice on Law & Order, his gravel-voiced, seen-it-all detective Lenny Briscoe becoming as iconic as the show's two-note theme. But in a twist worthy of a Scorsese film, the man who made a career playing cops had real-life ties to the other side of the law, not through wrongdoing, but through a chilling silence that kept a mob hit shrouded in mystery for decades. The story begins in 1971, when Orbach, already a Broadway legend, but not yet a household TV name, landed a role in The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, a darkly comic crime film loosely based on Joseph Crazy Joe Gallo, a notorious New York mobster. Fresh out of prison, Gallo was furious over the film and demanded to meet the actor who had indirectly played him. Instead of conflict, the two struck up an unlikely friendship. The theater-loving mobster saw a kindred spirit in Orbach, who often portrayed smooth-talking tough guys with streetwise intellect. Their association took a dark turn months later. On April 7th, 1972, Gallo's 43rd birthday, the gangster was gunned down at Umberto's Clam House in Little Italy, an infamous hit ordered by the rival Colombo family. Multiple accounts suggest Orbach and his wife had been celebrating with Gallo earlier that night, first at the Copacabana, watching Don Rickles at midnight, and possibly later at Umberto's. Whether Orbach was present during the shooting remains one of New York crime history's great unanswered questions. One thing is certain, Orbach never talked. Homicide detective Joseph Coffey later claimed the actor was brought in for questioning, but refused to name names. "You'd think he'd want to help us solve it," Coffey told the National Enquirer, but when I questioned him, Orbach clammed up. In a city where loyalty is everything, Orbach, a man who spent his career playing men of the law, abided by an unspoken code of silence. A real-life omerta, more fitting for a gangster than a detective. Orbach never addressed the rumors, taking the secret with him to his grave in 2004. What if I told you one of the Sopranos stars grew up with her own mob story? Let's dive into Catherine Narducci's incredible, real-life connection to organized crime. Narducci, who played Charmaine Bucco, didn't just act in the mob world, she lived it. Hailing from East Harlem and raised in an Italian-American household, her father, Nicky Narducci, ran a bar and had connections to organized crime. But when Catherine was just 10, her father was killed in a brutal mob-style hit outside his bar in the mid-70s. Growing up in Italian Harlem, Catherine described feeling oddly protected, saying, "I had like 20 other fathers. I just felt very safe." Only later did she realize these polished father figures weren't exactly law-abiding citizens. Wise guys, listen up. I'm an Audible associate. Use my link for a free 30-day trial. Binge Donnie Brasco, The Godfather, Wise Guy, Casino. All the classics to channel your inner Tony. Enjoy this video? Don't miss The Sopranos, Where Are They Now?